Welcome to meeting number 58 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Bill S-245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, granting citizenship to certain Canadians. Today, pursuant to the order of reference of Thursday, June 23rd, 2023, the committee will resume consideration of Bill S-245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, granting citizenship to certain Canadians. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and happy to see everybody back after a 2-week constituency break weeks. Related to S-245, given the tight timeline of the requirement for the bill to have been reported back to the House, I'm going to move the following motion, Madam Chair, a copy of which in both French and English has been sent to the clerk for distribution for committee members, and that the motion will read as follows: that pursuant to Standing Order 97.1, the committee requests an extension of 30 sitting days to consider Bill S-245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, bracket, granting citizenship to certain Canadians, close bracket, referring to the committee on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, to give the bill the consideration it requires, and that the chair present this request to the House. Madam Chair, as indicated, we're kind of a little bit down to the wire here. With the timeline, and to ensure that the committee has the opportunity to do all of the necessary work related to this bill, I'm therefore moving this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. So Ms. Kwan has moved the motion to request for an extension in dealing with Bill S-245. Mr. Dhaliwal, you were saying something?
We're not experts, but at times, Madam Kwan brings in really a good perspective. I think it's a good idea to support her, and let's support and move forward with the meeting.
Mr. Reddycop?
So, just so I understand, that Ms. Kwan is asking to extend the time to consider this bill by 30 days. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Essentially, yes, and we extending the time, because there's a timeline for us. We're required to report it back to the House, and it's to extend that timeline to report it back to the House by 30 days.
So just a process question, and this is new to me. I haven't done this one before. So can the committee just unilaterally say that and do we have to report that to the House? Is there something the House has to do in return? How does that work exactly?
Thank you, Mr. Reddycop. So if we request for an extension and we cannot report back with all the consideration of the bill, we request for an extension, and if this motion passes in the committee, I will present that in the House, and then House will consider to grant the extension. Mr. Reddycop.
So you present it to the House, and then the House has to consider it and vote on it? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the House will have to decide.
Yes, so just an explanation to that. If a committee feels it will not be able to complete its consideration of a private member's public bill referred to it within 60 sitting days, it may request an extension of 30 further sitting days. Only one extension may be sought. As soon as a committee report requesting an extension is presented, a motion to concur in the report is deemed to have been moved and seconded. No debate takes place, as the motion is deemed put to vote right away, and the vote is deferred until the next Wednesday sitting. Mr. Reddycop.
So do we know when 30 sitting days is? That's a long time from now. And are we allowed, can we do less than 30, or does it have to be 30?
We can request for a maximum of 30 days. We cannot request more than 30 days. Mr. Reddycop.
And has someone done the math on when that actually is? 30 sitting days?
Yeah, I'll just start.
Madame la Présidente, est-ce qu'on a une copie de la motion?
Madam Chair, do we have a copy of this motion?
Ms. Kwan has presented.
Yes.
So it will be, is it confirmed June 5th? Yeah. We can request 30 for like a maximum 30 days. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It does not have to be the full 30 days. If we complete this work before the 30 days, it can be, but it's up to 30 days. That's the maximum timeline to which you can ask for this extension. And it's the standard language that Madam Chair just read out. So that's why it reflects that.
Okay. Any further? So, Madam Clerk, if you can take the vote on Madam Kwan's motion.
Mr. Ali? Yes. Mr. Dhaliwal? Yes.
Yes.
Mr. El-Khoury?
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga?
Pour.
Madame Lalonde?
Pour.
Mr. Kimmich?
Yes.
Mr. Maguire?
Yes.
Mr. Redekop?
Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner?
Yes.
Monsieur Fortin?
Oui.
Ms. Kwan?
Yes.
The motion is adopted that we will request for an extension of 30 days. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm now going to move a second motion, a copy of which has been sent to the clerk also in both French and English. And the motion is as follows, that the committee report the following to the House, that the committee recommends to the House that it be granted the power during its consideration of Bill S-245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, bracket, granting citizenship to certain Canadians, close bracket, to expand the scope of the bill such that the provisions of the bill be not limited to an application to retain his or her citizenship under Section 8 as it is read before April 17th, 2009. Madam Chair, we've had extensive discussion about this, particularly with witnesses who came before us. And as we know, lost Canadians, there are many categories of lost Canadians. The Bill S-245 currently deals with the category of lost Canadians pertaining to the 28-year-old age rule. However, it leaves out many other categories of lost Canadians. Most notably, the current situation are such that many families are faced with forced separation because of the first-generation cutoff rule that came about with Bill C-37 back in 2009. And we've heard from witnesses who urge us, we, the committee, the government, make amendments to this bill, which would be out of scope for this bill to address those lost Canadians. There are other categories as well to which we can get into the details when we get to clause by clause, but in order for that to be considered, this motion is required. And so I'm therefore moving this motion so that we can follow absolutely the procedure as has been advised to me by the head clerk and the legislative clerk sitting at the table to make sure that we do not end up in a bad situation with this effort. So to that end, I hope committee members will support this motion and as I've put forward.
On Mr. Kimmich.
Yeah, so I'm obviously going to be the bearer of bad news that I think this is a bad idea to expand the scope on a private member's bill coming from the Senate, and I'll explain why. So there are a bunch of reasons why each one of us should be worried about this, because then you open the door for any private member's bill by any member that reaches a committee to then have this done to them after that member testified and expressly asked that the bill not have its scope amendment. And that member, the member of the Senate, Senator Yona Martin, was very reasonable, said if there's language tweaks that need to be done and changes that need to be done for her intent to be captured, which is these 2 years of lost Canadians, to have their particular issue fixed. That was part of the deal that she reached with her Senate colleagues in order to expedite the bill from the Senate, through the Senate, to the House of Commons. This bill did not receive another round of reviews at the Senate. It was expedited to the House of Commons thanks to that understanding that it was tight in scope. It had been already reviewed by the Senate in a previous parliament. And therefore, when it got here, it got to us without the Senate having looked at it again. The intent and scope of the bill, that member before this committee said repeatedly under questioning that she wanted it kept to her original intent for the scope not to be expanded. Now, the warning to all of us and to all of you here is this could happen to any of you. Any of you who are so fortunate to have a private member's bill pass at second reading and come before a committee. You could have members come here and either deconstruct or vandalize your private member's bill with other things that were not your original intent. And I'm an originalist. I would like to keep to the intent of the person, even if I disagree with their purpose. I have seen private members' bills before committees from Liberal members, from the Bloc, from the NDP that I disagreed with, and at no point did I ever think it was wise to go into a bill and insert things that a member expressly told me they did not want to see inside it. That's just, I think, good parliamentarianism. I just want to be respectful of my colleagues, even in the other political parties and senators that I don't often talk to in that other place. Their intent in their bill, once it passes to a certain stage of legislation, I want to keep it intact and a straight up or down vote on the original intent and scope of the bill. So what's going to happen here, if you vote for this, is it may happen on some of your private members' bills or Senate bills from your side of the House or from an affiliation with a Senate group that you feel particularly strong to. And who knows, it might be me coming to a future committee to sub in and be the one who leads that type, what I'm going to call it, vandalism of the original legislative intent of a legislator. And for those of you who've been here for quite a long time, who are sometimes nodding with me in agreement, you have seen this happen. I do not like it when it happens because I think it is a bad idea. We have an opportunity here to pass this piece of legislation before a potential election in a minority parliament that we don't know when it happens. This type of scope expansion on a private Senate bill is going to lead to senators reviewing it at a committee. They're going to do it. They're going to see whether the original intent was kept or not. And if they do a single amendment, they're going to send it back to the House and ping-pong it between our two chambers, which likely is very likely these lost Canadians that Senator Yona Martin wanted to help with a straightforward, very precise, focused bill won't happen. And then we'll be back to the starting point once again after another parliament. And who knows what that parliamentary makeup may be. The government, if it wanted to today, could table a piece of legislation and address whatever concerns there are. Members of the New Democratic Recognized Party, members of the Bloc could do the same thing as well. They could propose a piece of legislation. They could come to parliamentarians, and we could see whether an agreement could be reached to expedite the bill, have it go to a different process. All of those things could be done. I'm just warning you, expansions of the scope of a bill is a bad idea, especially when it's done expressly against the intent that the senator came before this committee and the House of Commons sponsor as well said expressly that was not the purpose of the bill. I don't know what type of expansions are being considered beyond the scope. I know there's been some debate over what those could be, but members are free to table drop amendments that are not submitted through the clerk for consideration, but it could be other ones that could be table dropped once you expand the scope of the bill. So I'm warning you, I think it is a bad idea. I also think it is interesting that none of us, at least I wasn't given a heads up ahead of time, with ample time to consider whether this is a wise thing to do or not, and to actually reach out to our caucus members who have an interest in the contents of the bill on whether it should be done. I have from the beginning been very clear, very direct. I don't like scope expansions. I try not to play games. I really try to limit those as best that I possibly can. I am not perfect. Nothing is perfect in this world, but I think you had perfection in the way this bill was presented to you. And those amendments that were submitted to the clerk. I can't mention them until we are considering them, but there are many of them which we're absolutely willing to support because they keep the original intent of the mover, and therefore we support them. Like that's the principle I'm applying here. But if you vandalize this bill, I will show up to other committees of your colleagues' bills, and I will personally deliver the same type of treatment you're about to met out to Senator Yona Martin, who has been nothing but willing to work with stakeholders, work with people, and work with all of us, government side, members of the other opposition parties as well. I think you'll agree with me, Senator Yona Martin is not a very partisan member of the Senate, and she takes her work very seriously on behalf of constituents in British Columbia. She takes her work seriously as a legislator, and I hope we would honor her by not expanding the scope of the bill beyond her original intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmich. Seeing no further debate, Mr. Reddycop.
Yeah, I need to just add a little bit to this. I wanted, the senator isn't here obviously today, so I just wanted to just expand a little bit on things that she's told us and just remind this committee of some of the things that Tom mentioned, that she very clearly did not want this bill to be expanded. She did not want, for the very reason that it will delay potentially and potentially even kill this bill if it sits too long, if it gets expanded too much, because as we know, then it has to go back to the Senate. It has to be, and part of the agreement to bring it from the Senate in the first place was that it was the same bill as before, that it's relatively simple, and the Senate, as I understand it, agreed to that. And so we're quite certain that this will have to go through the whole process again, which could ultimately result in some further changes, which could end up back here at this committee again, and it just goes on and on and on. And so I want to reiterate again that the senator was very clear on this point, that she did not, she specifically foresaw this potential happening, because as we know, there are still issues with the Citizenship Act and other people who have been unable to keep their citizenship or lose their citizenship. And so we know that there's issues. But she specifically said the goal was not to solve all those issues with this bill. That was not the goal at all. The goal was to put a simple bill forward that could zip its way through both houses and at least fix a portion of the problem. And then some of the other issues that we know of could come back in the form of a different bill. And as Tom pointed out, the government easily could put through another piece of legislation, because I'm sure that some of the work has been done, and so those things are known what needs to be done. And so if we go the route of trying to expand this bill, we very much run the risk of running the bill into the weeds where it will not actually survive the Parliament. It'll take too long. And this is something that has been going on, I don't know, how many iterations is this now that we've seen? And it just keeps coming back and it never makes it through because it's too complicated. It comes back and it never makes it through. And so that's the whole point of this bill, is to have a simple bill to deal with one thing. Now, I know that we did hear some testimony that maybe the way the bill was written, there were some issues and it needed maybe some clarification. But, you know, we're all smart people. We have a lot of smart people behind us. We could make those clarifications, I think, and retain the intent of the bill, putting the words in that need to be there to properly accomplish what the bill is meant to accomplish, without unnecessarily burdening it with expansions that are going to cause confusion, that are going to cause a lot of discussion and potentially cause some disagreement, not just in this House but in the other place as well. And so I think we really need to be careful and really need to be mindful. I think Tom did a good job of explaining the pitfalls and the dangers of going down this road, but we cannot abuse the right that we have to take a member's private member's bill and actually move it in a way that member expressly said not to do. And I mean, it'd be one thing if she hadn't said, if she was, you know, didn't have an opinion on this, but she clearly had an opinion. She stated it right here at the committee, and she's told many of us personally that same opinion. And so I just want to make sure that we all clearly understand that we are going expressly against her wishes on this, and I just don't think we should do that. I think we should respect her. I think we should respect any any member of our legislative system that puts forward something, respect their intent and their wishes, particularly on a private member's bill. So that's my thoughts on this, Madam Chair.
Mr. Kimmich?
So, Madam Chair, I'm looking at the wording of the bill here, of the motion, and it says to expand the scope of the bill such that the provisions of the bill be not limited to an application to retain his or her citizenship under Section 8, as it read before April 17th, 2009. When I'm looking at this, it means anything in the Citizenship Act, then we could propose to amend in the consideration of this bill. I have very strong opinions about things like citizenship ceremonies being done in person and not having the click for citizenship option. Are those the type of table drop motions that members want to open themselves up to? Because I think it's a good legislative idea. I would like to work on a private member's bill for that to be the first and only option, and then have very strict conditions under which it could be considered. There's also the question about substantial connection to Canada and how that should be defined. I again have very strong views on what it should be, but I'm not proposing to insert them to this bill unless you pass this motion and expand the scope. But then I may be so gifted to write it out, and then we will have debates endlessly on how it should be considered. You've given also an extra 30 days possibly to be doing this. So if we're just going to review the entire Citizenship Act, then let's do a fulsome and complete review then, if we're going to go completely beyond the scope of the original intent of the bill. So again, it's a warning. I don't think this is the right direction to go to. I'm willing to put in whatever work is required to get S245 back to the House in as clear legal language as the government believes is needed, with members of the public service here to explain what the effects would be of different pieces of legislation that we would be amending and the way we would be amending it here. Like I said, the original intent and scope was very specific. Senator Yona Martin was extremely direct and honest about what she was trying to do. And my warning goes back that if you expand the scope of this bill, then this is an idea to do it to every single private member's bill, members of the House of Commons and members of the Senate. And some of us have long memories. We're like elephants, and we will do it to every single other bill where we feel there is an opportunity to insert partisan agendas into it. I don't think that was the intent here. On government legislation, that is a different story, and that I think we all accept that things are done to amend it. But on private members' bills and on Senate bills, because we know that these are initiatives of members, they're not driven by parties, they're driven by individual members who have one issue they really care about. That we would leave that intent intact and would allow members to legislate for themselves and persuade fellow parliamentarians that it is a good idea. So again, it's a fair warning, but this is everything in the Citizenship Act becomes eligible for us to consider. There'd be a lot more public servants here from the different branches to explain to us the impact of different changes that we could potentially do.
Thank you. Ms. Rempel-Gardner, and then Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Chair. Just if I'm understanding my colleagues correctly here, so what's happened is we've now extended the time to review this bill before it's reported back to the House. So we've added another 30 days. So just what I'm trying to read between the lines here from all of my colleagues is, number one, we've actually extended the time for this debate significantly, or review for this bill significantly, which means there may be significant delays in actually getting this bill passed. Two, if we're opening up the scope of the bill beyond what its tight and narrow focus was, there's two significant risks. One, that if there are things that are put into the bill that are beyond the scope of the bill, there may be procedural issues in the House, but also more importantly, if it is referred back to the Senate, it might stall in the Senate again. And I don't think that anyone here wants to see the action, the original intent of this bill, be stalled in any way. So I just to my colleagues in the governing party, I think that's problematic. Number two, if I'm reading between the lines on what my colleague's saying, is do we really want to have the Immigration Committee all of a sudden be dropped into a broader review of the Citizenship Act? Because if we are opening up this bill beyond the scope of what it's here right now, I will propose amendments that are well beyond the scope of this bill. I have a lot of things I'd like to see changed in the Citizenship Act. I will come prepared with those things, and we will be debating them. I would prefer not to do that because, out of respect for what my colleagues have just argued, which is, I believe Senator Martin put forward this bill in good faith. She negotiated the terms with her colleagues in the Senate. if others in this room want to put forward amendments that are well beyond the scope of this bill, they have the opportunity to table private members' bills themselves, and the government also has the ability to table its own legislation. So I would just say that if we are proceeding, to my colleagues in the governing party, if we are proceeding down this path, we will come with other amendments. I would love to talk about citizenship ceremonies being online now instead of in person. I think we could devote several meetings to that. I don't know. That sounds like a good amendment to me to the Citizenship Act. There's many things we could amend. So, do we want to do this with a bill that's intent is somewhat nonpartisan? And that's what is on the table here. So think carefully about how you vote. I will not be voting in favor of this motion for all of the reasons just given. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll just make some very short comments. Suffice to say that there's no political partisan agenda here. The agenda here is to try and address the lost Canadians who are indeed suffering right now, whose family has been faced with forced separation and all kinds of challenges. I don't think that's the intention of what this committee wants to see happen to the community in the broader community. That's what's happening right now, just to be clear. As it happens today is the 14th anniversary to which Bill C-37 came into force in effect, where it stripped first-generation citizens from passing on citizenship rights to their children and subsequent generations. We have people who are here today who presented as witnesses in the last round who are gravely concerned. What I heard from the senator, what I heard from conservative friends of mine and the liberal friends of mine and the Bloc friends of mine is that people want to address the lost Canadian issue. So we have an opportunity to do that. And that's exactly what this is, to seize on that opportunity, to see if we can actually make whole the family members who are suffering as a result of that. I am hearing some threats related to it, but from my perspective, I'm here to try and get a job done, and my motivation here is for the people who are suffering, and I know many of them. They've contacted me, they've written to me, I've spoken with them, I've met with them, and I feel like it's my job to do my level best, and I understand that this is out of scope, and throughout the entire committee stage, when we had witnesses before us, including officials, I asked the questions around outer scope with respect to that. And I'm motivated to see if we can actually do something that is unusual, not for partisan reasons, but for the public good. So I hope committee members will vote in support of this motion and see if we can get the job done.
Mr. Reddy-Cobb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I think about this, and there's already been some suggestions about what could potentially get added to this, I guess that sort of is the question in my mind, is what are we talking about adding? Like what is the scope that we're trying to expand? And the problem, the big thing about unknowns is that that creates fear, right? We all know that in all kinds of different aspects of life. And so that's kind of what's happening here, is that we have a lot of unknowns. We don't know what it is exactly that is being asked of us, what kinds of things. We don't know, where this could all end up going. And so I guess I'm curious to know maybe some of the ideas of the, I don't know if that's possible to let me know, but where do you want to go? Where would the member want to go with this in terms of the scope? Are we talking about a whole bunch of things, or are we talking about one thing, or what's happening there? And that's, I think, something that's concerning to me. I think at the same time, and it's been mentioned today also, we have many people that want to see this problem resolved at least at some degree, and there's been so many attempts at it not getting done, and reference was made to people that are even in this room right now that have been working on this for a long time, and this is a very important issue to them, and it's to all of us, and this is just a way to almost ensure that this isn't going to happen. It's not going to work. And so this is very concerning of me. I want to see this problem solved. Many people have worked very hard to make some progress on this issue. And I recognize that it's not going to be perfect. We're not going to once and for all solve every single problem. But I believe that in some of the discussions we've had, there are some very good solutions to take this legislation, maybe tweak it a little bit within the scope of the legislation to ensure that it actually is accomplishing what it was intended to do, and that it doesn't have unintended consequences. We heard a lot about unintended consequences from the witnesses that were here. And that's certainly, back to the Senator's original intent. She very clearly stated here that she did not want to create unintended consequences and create new groups of lost Canadians. And so I think I've heard some of the discussions that we've had. There's some good ideas to maybe patch a couple of holes in this, which I think we're all very capable of doing. And so then we can solve this at least this piece of the puzzle. Maybe not all the pieces in this go around, but at least we can get it through, move it back to the House, have the Senate approve it, and then it's done. And if we don't do that, it's going to just keep, as Tom I think said, ping-ponging back and forth and won't get resolved. And so those are my thoughts, Madam Chair, at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reddycobb. Mr. Taliwal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, hopefully it's not a personality conflict and a political issue, because I want to commend what Mr. Kimmich said about Senator Martin. I have had the opportunity to work with her over the past many years, because she's from British Columbia, and I have seen her, working across party lines and been very reasonable, and I certainly have tremendous amount of respect for her. I hope Madam Kwan had discussions with her as well before she brought this amendment. But on the other hand, what Madam Kwan is saying about Bill C-37, it hit home. I remember those days. There was a much uproar in the community. My own brother, who's a Canadian citizen working for a Canadian company, his son was born, outside the country, and it hit us at home as well. That certainly when it comes to Bill C-37 that was passed in 2009 under that government, that was not a perfect bill either. That has left many Canadians out. So both sides, if we look at this way, there is a fair chance to have further conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Daliwal. Mr. Rampal Garner.
I think that my colleague, Mr. Reddycobb, had brought forward some potential questions about what we could consider in a broader open scope review of the Citizenship Act. So I'm happy to discuss what I would like to see if we are going to open up the scope of the Citizenship Act. Some of the amendments I would be proposing to the Citizenship Act writ large would include things like there's broad across partisan divide disappointment with the government's decision to eliminate in-person citizenship ceremonies or to go to online applications. This isn't just, me as a conservative saying this. This is many people from across the partisan divide. There's been many op-eds talked about this. So I would be likely proposing amendments that I'm sure that the government probably isn't going to be happy to discuss, and that Senator Martin isn't going to be happy is going to be in her bill. But if we are going to be opening up this bill to look at the Citizenship Act, we should perhaps be talking about an amendment to reverse the government's decision on this front. I even think of, I believe it was Calgary former Mayor Naheed Nenshi wrote a column about this recently, talking about why these in-person ceremonies are so important. I would be putting forward an amendment to amend the Citizenship Act to prevent the government on this course, and I would be holding the minister to account for this decision as well. I don't think that was the intent of Senator Martin with her bill, but if the governing party decides to, carry forward with a review of this, that would be something I would be seeking to amend. Today in the Globe and Mail as well, there's a headline that says, Canada's farming future in trouble unless 30,000 immigrants fill the gap of retiring farmers. The article goes on to talk about the fact that the government hasn't done a lot to address pathways for agricultural workers to come into the country on a permanent basis, and to look at how we can address immigration to meet that need while addressing the cost of farmland in Canada. I would probably be looking at exploring some sort of amendment in that regard, given that that's a huge issue that's facing the problem or the country. I know that many of my colleagues as well, I would think everybody around this committee, are deeply, deeply concerned about the visa wait times from countries like, I think my caseworker said Vietnam now is something like 800 days. I'm looking down the table. It's pretty high. If we're going to be opening up the scope of the Citizenship Act for amendment in this bill, I would be seeking to look for perhaps some legislated mandated guidelines around wait times that the governments have far exceeded, that is, preventing family reunification and other issues, and that is actually a detriment to work in the country. That's an amendment I would probably drop as well, too. I'm thinking about postgraduate work permits, accreditation for foreign workers, other things that the governments have failed on that have created labor supply shortages. The structure of settlement support services for rural communities in Canada. I recently had a meeting with, many of my colleagues here know I work closely with the Yazidi community in Canada. The government has never addressed the fact that Canada still utilizes refugee selection criteria that may pose problems for genocide survivors, where the ethnic minority and a majority in a refugee camp may be biased against genocide survivors that have just survived ethnic cleansing. That's something that the Citizenship Act has never really addressed either, and I think I would be tabling probably a motion in that regard. The point I'm trying to make here is that if we as a committee are agreeing to open up the scope of the Citizenship Act to much broader than what Senator Martin was considering in her bill, then what we're doing is we're saying each of us here now have the opportunity to put forward each of our issues that are individual outside of the private members bill process or outside of the government legislation process and put it in here. So now that I've laid this all out, particularly to my colleagues in the governing party, you do understand that this is why, through the chair, the committee has processes around scope on private members bills. It's so this sort of thing doesn't happen. But if the committee is going to override those procedures, then I sure am going to be availing myself of that opportunity. And it is going to be long, and it is going to be fulsome, and it is going to draw attention to many issues that the government had failed on. I am more than happy to use committee time to do that. But the thing is that, again, no matter how well-intentioned, I would think that any of the things I've just mentioned are well-intentioned effort as well, too. Process has to be followed. So if we are opening up the scope of this, I am fairly confident of what's going to happen is either the Speaker or the House is going to say, no, this is not in scope, which is going to delay the bill further outside of the extra 30 days that Ms. Kwan just moved for it to be delayed. Then it is going to go back to the Senate and likely be delayed further, and ergo, justice is not served for the people who are the original intent of this bill. If somebody wants to amend the bill or put something forward outside of the scope of the bill, the appropriate way to do that is to table someone's own private member's bill or to lobby the government to put forward a bill, because the government has the ability to put forward government legislation. But if this committee does decide to open up the bill, I have at least 5 or 6 amendments to the Citizenship Act. I am very excited to spend a lot of time discussing. I can't wait. I know there's a lot of people in my community. I mean, even settlement services. I just had a long conversation with a colleague who works in settlement services who was very disappointed about the structure of the budget and settlement services, particularly in Western Canada. Giddy up, I guess. Or we could just proceed in scope and get this bill passed to bring justice to the people who are in there to be solved. We can make amendments that are in scope to address some of the concerns that were raised. But again, things that are outside of scope, proper parliamentary procedure dictates that they're put forward in another separate piece of legislation. Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. McGuire.
Madam Chair, as well, I just would like to reiterate some of the things that have been said here in regards to that, and maybe add some personal views to this as well. For certain, we have had witnesses come before this committee in regards to Bill 245, S245, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, granting citizenship to certain Canadians, and that is the focus of the bill. It was the intent of the person who brought it forward, Senator Yana Martin, and it was made very clear at this committee that that was her intent, was to have this specific narrow focus of this particular bill so that we can at least help someone. It's been years outstanding in this regard. There are other areas, and as my colleagues have just said, there's other means of being able to deal with those. We dealt with that at the committee when Ms. Martin was here. So I don't know why we're trying to extend it to do this now. I get the fact that we were extending it for 30 days, but if the intent is not to bring in anything more than the word changes that my colleague or vice chair of this critic in this area indicated, then that's one thing. But 30 days is a long time when you've already got a bill that's very focused on what it was requested to be done by the person who brought the bill forward. I've been on this committee now again since fall, and I was on it 5 years ago when we went through a whole list of things. My colleague, I didn't know she was going to bring up the report today from the 300,000 workers needed in the agricultural industry as well, but I come from the agricultural industry, Madam Chair, and I can assure you that we dealt with this back in the days of TFWs, back in those days in the agriculture industry, the shortage of labor then, the trying to get people into activities here that could fulfill those spots. A lot of these people that we're trying to help are already in Canada. We want to get their citizenship as quickly as we can. And I would also agree that I'm not very enthralled with the idea of getting your citizenship through the click of a button. I really believe that ceremonies do mean things, do mean something, and they certainly do to those citizenship ceremonies that I've been at. The people there take them very, very seriously. They phone my office. We spend about half of our time dealing with citizenship issues in the Brandon area. And we're very thankful for being one of the 15 places in Canada and the Westman Immigrant Services in Brandon that has been able to focus on the citizenship opportunities that are arising from the Rural and Northern Initiative. But we want to make sure that we keep this particular bill, because there's lots of other ways of expanding it to those outside of this bill who are not included in it. This is very specific to a certain group of individuals, and I think that it's very important that we use this bill to even though we've expanded it for 30 days, to certainly not use that amount of time to deal with it when it can be done if it's just wordings and corrections to the bill, that we can do it somewhat more accessibly. This bill is ready to go, as I say. The idea of vandalizing the bills is not a threat. I mean, this is just, it's about precedent. It's not about whether we like the idea or not, as my colleague critic has just indicated from Calgary. It's about the precedent of what could happen to anybody's bill in the future. And I know I brought my own bill, C-208, forward about 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, I guess, in regards to family farm transfers and family business transfers, Madam Chair. And we did get that consensus through Parliament, but there was, talks of changes, but the government has decided to do that through regulatory mechanisms that were done. And we're still studying those because it was just brought in the budget, but we're very thankful that the bill has moved forward. It is active. People are being able to use it across Canada. And but with this type of a bill, the bill that's before us, if we don't do this in the manner that has been put forward by the mover of the S-245, Ms. Martin herself, Senator Martin, then it will likely end up doing what my colleague has indicated, going back and forth with amendments, ping-pong back and forth, when we know full well, everybody sitting here, that the Senate agreed on this specifics of this wording of this bill as the only way that it passed the Senate to get here in the first place. So I think we should honor the fact that all of the Senate indicated that that's the way it should be, not just Ms. Martin, even though it's her bill. she was very diligent in being able to make sure that she got the consensus of the Senate to be able to bring this forward in the manner that it is. And so I would say that it's not about motivation to pass the bill or the motives to pass it. It's about the setting of the precedent that this would do for all future private members' bills in the House of Commons. I think that we know what she has said and indicated in the bill itself, and there are a number of other issues, I guess, and areas that I pointed out from the past experience that I've had on this committee that we could be dealing with. My colleagues have mentioned some of them already, and I've outlined a few more. We traveled extensively in Canada at that time to be able to look at the types of individuals that would be affected by some of the changes that were required from revamping the whole Immigration Act. We're not suggesting that we need to do that with this bill. In fact, we're emphatically saying we don't need to do that with this bill because this bill is very well written and very focused on its requested outcomes. And so, therefore, Madam Chair, I'll be voting against the idea of the amendment here to put forward further amendments to this bill that may allow for amendments that would be out of the scope of this bill.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Reddycop?
I'll defer my time for the moment. Thanks.
Next, we have Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, when I hear some of the comments from the opposition, and not necessarily relating to the motion that Madam Kwan brought forward, I can't sit back and take this because I have the institution memory, and particularly the regressive immigration policies that Conservatives brought in when they were in power. I can talk about those regressive policies for months and can write books on those. And let me talk about a few of the things that are raised on the other side. Certainly time to time, we had a COVID. We brought in a policy to have the citizenship ceremony at home. And certainly, I would love to have in person. But on the other hand, I was able to join one of the families that was very happy to have it at home because the whole family was there. And I still remember the name of the person, Shashil Kumar, and his family they invited me, and we really enjoyed at home having had that ceremony. So at least they had the option. But on the other hand, Madam Chair, I do agree, and there are always chances of getting fraud as well. When we have online tests, it happens in every test. Certainly there are pros and cons on that particular thing, and the issue of agriculture, farm labor that came up. I remember, Madam Chair, I wasn't even elected at that time. It was a year, I think, 2003 or 4, when Joe Wolpe was the Minister of HRSDC. There was a pilot project came in to help the farmers to bring in workers from Mexico. And I can tell you that he did it overnight. And then when I approached him, because people from British Columbia approached me, the farmers, and I went to him, and we brought in that pilot project, and that project is very successful now across Canada. And I can talk about the parents and grandparents was mentioned here, Madam Chair. The regressive policies, the Conservatives almost tried to shut down the parents and grandparents. 5,000 applications. They raised the age of a dependent child from, or lowered the age from 22 years to 18 years. So as the families don't even qualify. And I can tell you, I take a pride for the Liberal here. The government took over. If you look at the past record, since 2015, if you take the average, Madam Chair, we accepted average of 20,000 applications, 4 times more than the Conservatives. Not only that, Madam Chair, in fact, we brought up the age of the dependent child from 18 to 22 years, so as more people can participate in those applications and more families can come in there. It doesn't stop there, Madam Chair. I can talk about this Bill C-37. That was their creation as well. They should have well thought at that time that they are leaving many Canadians out of the Canadian citizenship that we are talking about today. We need to talk about that today if that was well thought process in 2009. Madam Chair, when it comes to immigration, I don't think there's any other government than the Liberal government that has done more to bring in the people, and even on the agriculture workers. I agree with Madam Rempel Garner that we have to give opportunity to agriculture workers to come from your temporary permit or work permit to a permanent residency. Look at, Madam Chair, when we brought in 90,000 openings, out of that, I still remember 40,000 were reserved for students, and then 30,000 was from an agriculture worker to professionals. So people who are in the agriculture industry, they can become permanent residents, and 20,000 were for the healthcare workers. Madam Chair, every opportunity the Liberal got, they have worked hard and diligently to bring in the immigration policy that are good for the small businesses, that is good for Canada, and is good for the Canadian families. Look at the numbers. I still remember, Madam Chair, when I got elected first time in 2006, and if I look at the numbers then, it was in the range of 200,000. And now we are bringing in 500,000 in 2025. Why? To help the farmers, to help the small businesses, to help the families. And I can go on forever, but I know the officials are here. I would love to stop here, but at some other point, we can have a good conversation on immigration policy.
Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal. Next is Mr. Kimmich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I could have listened to Mr. Dhaliwal for another hour if need be, but I do have an amendment I'm going to get to. Can't help myself but to correct maybe some of what he said. I think all of our offices are inundated with immigration case files, more now than at any time in living memory. The department has changed what a member of parliament can ask for, what information we can get. It is the department that gets the #1 for ATIPs because people file access to information requests all the time trying to figure out what's happened to their file, 60,000 of which were assigned to GCMS codes that nobody was actually monitoring, and it was like for filing reasons, whatever excuse they were trying to find. The backlog reached 2.9 million at one point. There was a backlog before the pandemic. It had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was bad administration of the Liberal government and the system that they have. All of us get files. People come into our offices saying, I haven't received a response. They denied me for ridiculous reasons. They forgot that I had provided a documentation, or I'm in a loop. They're asking for something that I can't get until I get this next part of the process done. And many of the things that the member just spoke about weren't problems pre-2015. Every single line, every program is more delayed than it has been before. There are written questions in the House that have been submitted that show that the processing times are longer than they were in 2015, that processing is way down in terms of meeting the service standards set by IRCC. The department sets its own service standard. It decides at what speed it should be doing the work in. We could actually legislate a service standard. The member could introduce an amendment now if this motion to expand the scope of this bill were to go into place, so that people wouldn't be losing status while they're in Canada, going from permanent residency to becoming citizens. The member could introduce many different rules in place. This department has doubled in terms of budget allocated to it, and all the wait times got longer. The backlog got longer. Despite doubling their budget, despite doubling the staff that works there, it got longer, not shorter. It didn't become simpler, it became more complex. And that's all under the administration of the Liberal government. So I'd be careful if Mr. Dhaliwal wants to go down this path and make this very partisan. I actually have a constructive amendment for this motion. So I'm going to read the amendment, and I'll just explain, I think, the wisdom in this. So it's just following the version sent by the clerk. At the very end of the English version, instead of the point, it's a comma, and that the clerk be instructed to accept amendments until May 15th, 2023. In the French version, dans la version française, je pense que ça serait, et j'espère que mon français est bon, comme je l'ai dit en
And I hope my French is adequate. You know, it's high school since I learned French, just written French. However, so for the French version, it would read, rather than a semicolon, and that the clerk be directed to accept amendments until the 15th of May, 2023. So that would be my amendment to this motion, Madam Chair.
Just so, if this does go through, and the
Madame la
scope is
Présidente,
expanded.
point d'ordre, simplement qu'on met
Point of order. I'm told that the interpreter is having some difficulty in following the speed of the debate. So if you'd like to slow them down.
Slower, Mr. Kimmich, so that interpreters can do that.
Oui, je peux, Madame la Présidente, si vous voulez.
Yes, I can. And if you wish, I can repeat in French. It's for the amendment that I made. Is that it? Okay. The amendment that I proposed to give more time so that we can consider the amendment and how we could amend this bill. And I haven't heard yet any other opinions other than Madame Kwan's motion be accepted as is. If we do vote for this motion, together with your permission, we'll talk to the sponsor of the bill, Senator Martin, to see if she finds this acceptable. But I know that my office and my consultants have excellent ideas to modify the bill. Not only the way the legislation functions, but not only for the lost Canadians, but for permanent residents in our country who are in the process of becoming citizens, as I was in '89 when I received my Canadian citizenship, and that we have the opportunity to discuss with the colleagues that are not members of this committee to see if they have any amendments to make. Now, the 30th of May is a reasonable period of time. It gives us enough time to discuss potential amendments with our caucuses, and we can come back here and do the work that the people elected us to do.
Now we have an amendment proposed by Mr. Kimmich. Garner.
I'm speaking to the main motion,
Okay.
so I'll wait for that.
Okay, so seeing no one for the debate, we can take a vote on the amendment, sub-amendment proposed by Mr. Kimmich. Madam Clerk, if you can please take the vote.
Vote on the amendment of Mr. Kimmich.
Yes.
Mr. Ali.
Against?
Mr. Dhaliwal. Monsieur El Khoury.
Contre?
Madame Kayabaga.
Contre.
Madame Lalonde.
Contre.
Mr. Kimmich.
For.
Mr. McGuire.
For.
Mr. Redekop.
Support.
Mrs. Rempel Garner.
In favor.
Monsieur Fortin.
contre.
Ms. Kwan.
No.
The amendment proposed by Mr. Kimmich is defeated. So we are back on the motion proposed by Ms. Kwan, Ms. Rempel Garner.
I just wanted to respond to the assertion one of my colleagues made that the citizenship ceremony change to online was something that was taken very seriously or, supported by many Canadians. In fact, there was an article published in the Toronto Star on Monday of this week by Mr. Mansour Lada. And the title of the article is, "I'm horrified by the suggestion of canceling in-person citizenship ceremonies." And he goes on to say that citizenship ceremonies are emotional and personal experiences, especially for those of us who had the privilege of participating in one. The Department of Citizenship and Immigration is contemplating an end to in-person citizenship ceremonies in favor of a secure online solution. So the government is, in fact, considering this option. He goes on to say, I still remember the citizenship ceremony that I had to attend when I proudly became a Canadian citizen in 1975. I was with my wife and son, all dressed up in our finest Hugo Boss, lined up with new Canadians of all background, happily showing off the Canadian flag. When the time came to sing the newly memorized national anthem, I was so emotional that my eyes welled up with tears. Every Canada Day, I still have visions of my heartbreaking citizenship ceremony experience. I am horrified the government is proposing to abolish this special welcoming in-person citizenship ceremony with an administrative online box and do away with a group singing of O Canada. The fact that Canada, the most friendly and welcoming nation in the world, would resort to a computer-oriented system to announce its citizens is appalling. Ceremonies in everyone's life, be it a birthday or a retirement party, play an important part signifying milestones in their lives. Now, this is a really interesting part, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I don't believe no one ever proposed any change in citizenship to be in person.
Yes, actually, Madam Chair, that is exactly what the government is doing, and it's why there is an article in the Toronto Star that I am reading for the record. That's exactly what the government is doing, and I am stating this as justification that if this motion is passed, I intend to propose an amendment to the Citizenship Act to prevent this from happening. All the people that are mentioned in this article, I intend for them to testify in front of committee to explain to my colleagues why it is so terrible that the government is proposing to do away with online citizenship ceremonies. So just to reiterate, another person in this article, to assuage my colleagues' fears, a former immigration minister under Prime Minister Jean Chrétien was so upset that he also wrote an op-ed for the Toronto Star, calling this proposal by the federal government under Prime Minister Trudeau, quote, an insult. This is a former Liberal cabinet minister of immigration himself. For years, my parents would recount how momentous and meaningful the ceremony was. Why would the government want to rob future citizens of this feeling of attachment? Another prominent defender. Now, this is really going to shake some of my colleagues on the other side. Former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, also a former refugee, and presided over a few citizenship ceremonies herself as an officer of the Order of Canada.
sorry for interrupting, Ms. Point of order, Ms. Karabaga.
Interested to know, Madam Chair, if we're still debating the motion at hand, or if we have decided to venture into other things.
We are the amendment was defeated. We are back on the motion proposed by Ms. Kwan.
Go back to the motion proposed by Ms. Kwan, because I think that the conversation that my colleague on the other side is having has nothing to do with the motion that we're debating right now.
Mr. Reddycop?
Yeah, on the same point of order. The whole point of the motion is to be able to introduce and expand the scope of this bill. And so I think what my colleague is trying to do is to, number one, suggest something that would be a very legitimate way to expand this bill, if that's what we're trying to do. And I think trying to give some background into what that might be. And so I think the subject of expanding the bill is exactly what we're talking about right now, and my colleague is talking about one potential way to do that, and there are many others that we could talk about just to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about in terms of expanding the bill.
Ms. Rampal-Garner?
On the same point of order, Chair. Again, to my colleague opposite, we are debating a motion regarding expanding the scope of a bill which is entitled an Act to Amend the Citizenship Act. So I am giving my colleagues an example of if we expand the scope, if we vote to accept Ms. Kwan's motion to expand the scope, there's no limitations on that. So I will be submitting amendments as well to amend the Citizenship Act, and I will be submitting an amendment to ensure that in-person citizenship ceremonies are carried on and that Canada doesn't implement the ridiculous and, quote, insulting by a former refugee practice of doing away with these ceremonies. So therefore, it is in order because I am giving an example of what I will do should this pass as a just so I'm debating the merits of the motion and giving my colleagues something to consider. So to carry on, to finish this article, which is just so devastating for the government, Tariq Hahad, a Syrian refugee famous for founding the Nova Scotia-based chocolatier Peace by Chocolate, described Canadian citizenship ceremonies as the magical rituals that bring everyone together, new and old citizens, to celebrate the true meaning of the Canadian dream. We cannot afford to lose the significance of this celebration of belonging, nor can we diminish the value of Canadian citizenship, he added. Credit should be given to the government for moving a notch forward on Indigenous peoples. That's great. That's good. But the new language of, so he talks about the new language of the oath. But what he is saying is that in this article that the citizenship ceremony should stay in place. So if we do vote to amend for this motion, I will certainly be putting forward an amendment to the Citizenship Act to ensure that citizenship ceremonies stay in person. This is something that, again, goes across political stripe, and I would love to see every person in this article come to this committee and be given a chance to talk about how important this is. This is something that should be amended in the Citizenship Act, given that the government they're proposing to do this right now. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. Now, if my colleagues would like me to present a private member's bill to do this, or perhaps the government would like to do this, perhaps they wouldn't want to vote to open up a private member's bill with a very narrow focus that we all agree on to put in place amendments that are out of scope. Now, I am going to say one thing. I just heard that my colleague from the NDP did a press conference about this prior to this committee meeting. I don't believe that she had talked to Senator Martin about this at all. She certainly didn't talk to us. So I have to surmise that this is now part of the Liberal NDP coalition agreement, that there's probably some sort of agreement between the House leaders to get this done, which is essentially, and you have to think about this, this is backdoor legislation. So my colleague does not have a private member spot, as I know right now, to be read. So what they're doing through this coalition agreement is they're saying, okay, we'll go way outside parliamentary procedure and allow you to put amendments into a bill that is not in scope. That's what we're going to do to preserve this coalition agreement. That's what I have to surmise here. And what I'm saying is, if that's the game we're playing, giddy up. Because I have a lot of things I would like to see amended in the citizenship bill. A lot. Years worth of things that I'm so eager to hold the government to on all their injustices towards. In fact, I think that there's going to be amendments on the Citizenship Act regarding the Afghan refugee crisis and all the things that happened around potentially fraudulent visas that we're about to look at as well. So I'm very excited. I have mountains of amendments for the Citizenship Act. You know what? Maybe I will vote in favor of this. Maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe I'm convincing myself that this sounds like a good idea. I'm looking down the table. Are we going to review the Citizenship Act? I don't know. It sounds exciting. Now I'm excited. I'm not the vice chair, so I defer to your position, but I'm excited. Let's amend the Citizenship Act, keep citizenship ceremonies in place. That's one thing for sure. I guess I better get busy. I don't know. Maybe I will vote in favor of this. Depends what my colleagues in the government do. They won't know what I'm going to do. Giddy up.
Okay, so seeing no further debate, we will take the vote on the motion proposed by Ms. Kwan. So, Madam Clerk, if you can please take the vote.
Mr. Ali.
In favor.
Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. El-Khoury.
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga. Madame Lalonde.
Pour.
Mr. Kimmich.
Contre.
Mr. Maguire.
Against?
Mr. Redekop.
Against.
Ms. Rempel-Gardner.
Against.
Monsieur Fortin.
Pour.
Ms. Kwan.
For.
So the motion moved by Ms. Kwan is adopted. Ms. Kwan?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Before I move a potential next motion, I just want to get clarification from the clerk in terms of a work schedule. From what I understand, Wednesday would be Afghanistan with the senator. And then I believe then on Monday, I'm not quite sure where things are at with Minister Sargent, who's supposed to come up before committee. And I know that there was some potential trading going on with Minister Fraser on the mains. Just want to sort of get an idea of what the lay of the land is. And I know that the committee also just got our draft report on processing delays, and we still have yet to finish Roxham Road, which has been sitting in the rock pile there, literally, for us to complete that report. Just want to see where things are at.
So what we have right now is, for this Wednesday, we have the Senator McFadden confirmed for the Afghanistan. 26th of April, that's next Wednesday, we have the availability confirmed from Minister Harjit Sajjan. As yet, we have not heard back from Minister Marco Mendicino. We have given him options of 24th and 1st. We have for May 3rd, Wednesday, we have the confirmation for 1 hour from Honorable Mar Garneau. And for May 10th, we have the confirmation from the Minister of the IRCC on the main estimates. And this consultation of draft report is
Sorry, I'm sorry, that went pretty fast. Did you say that on the 24th of April that we may have Minister Mendicino? Is that correct?
Yeah, we have given him this option, so as yet we have not received any reply back from his office. We have given him 2 dates, May 1st and April 24th. So as soon as we get some confirmation, we will find out like in a day or so, and then I will get back with the updated calendar. Once we have confirmation from the ministers, then I will get the calendar updated and get it circulated to everybody.
Wait and see what is the situation with the minister on the 24th.
Yeah,
And
based
then-
on that, the response which we get, I will update the calendar and then we will go from there. Mr. Reddycop?
Thank you. So just a quick note on when the minister comes to speak to the main estimates, does that include SUP A's as well? Will that include that at that time?
The minister has agreed to come on the main estimates.
So that means we would have to do another meeting for the SUP A's then? Is that the idea?
Yeah, right now this meeting is scheduled for the main estimates.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Reddycop.
So for a week from today, we don't have anything scheduled at the moment?
As yet we don't have, we will check with Minister Marco Mendicino's office, and then we will update the calendar. Okay, so I'm just waiting for a response from their office. Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the minister does not show up for the 24th or unavailable for the 24th, can we finish Roxham Road on the 24th? Just get that report off of our desk.
Let me find
we're
out about
almost
the
done.
minister, and then I think maybe let's have a discussion based on which date he gives, like either 24th or 1st. We will, I will let you know, and then we can update the calendar. Okay? Okay. No other. Ms. Kwan.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. All right, I think then we've completed our business for today. I move that we now adjourn.
Is it the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting? Yes. Vote? Yeah. Ms. Kwan has moved to adjourn the meeting, so we will take the vote on that.
Mr. Ali?
Yes.
Mr. Dhaliwal?
Yes.
Mr. El Khoury?
Pour.
Madame Kayubaga? Madame Lalonde? Mr. Kimich?
No.
Mr. McGuire?
No.
Mr. Redekop?
No.
Ms. Rempel Garner?
No.
Mr. Fortin? Ms. Kwan?
Yes.
So the meeting is adjourned. I brought some Scarborough sweets, so have some sweets. So, Mr. Dali.